Starting about 11,700 years ago, people used wild plants in a way that changed plants themselves, called domestication. However, the same plants also changed how humans lived in their environments, transforming humans from a hunter gatherer to an agriculture and civilizational lifestyle. Plant domestication is believed to have sprang up independently in 24 sites around the world. Archaeobiology is used to analyze human remains to find out how people were living and eating during that period in history, and bone structure and DNA can reveal a lot. A lot of the crops we know today were very different, and what we see today are a result of farmers selectively breeding the plants which possess the most desirable traits. In the past, crops such as wheat, barley, and rice used to shed their seeds once ripe, forcing farmers to search and pick them up from the ground. However, as agriculture developed, only those plants whose husks and seeds held onto the stem through non shattering made it easier for people to harvest grain survived. More specialization also led to tools like knives and sickles being developed to help with agriculture. As domestication progressed, more plants could fit in the same plot of ground, but as a result, they required more and more water and labor. So, a community and larger population was needed for the caring of the fields of crops, deforesting the environments, but the monoculture helped with creating excess food to feed the larger population. Moreover, societies became more complex as people produced more, took ownership of lands, and began to store and trade valuable resources. The formation of these densely crowded early civilizations also encouraged the rise of plagues and parasites. In times of famine, there was poor nutrition, and tooth decay rose with the increase in carbohydrate consumption. Trash heaps and dirty animal pens were ideal for hookworm. With civilization also came social classes, where people stopped pooling their harvest collectively in shared structures but instead storing them in their own houses, inevitably leading to war as societies fought each other over resources. The first agricultural revolution occurred when human beings stopped chasing their food around large patches of territory and instead settled in one place and grew food on purpose. Earliest evidences of domestication seems to have begun in the Middle East. Animals as well as plants were domesticated, and those were dogs, sheep, goat, wheat, and barley. There is evidence of bread being baked more than 14,500 years ago in Jordan. Also, sheep and goats grew smaller and tamer, and cattle was domesticated three separate times in the Near East, India, and North Central Africa, and the features of the cattle remain distinct from each other. Horses were domesticated later in 3500 BC. Lentils and beans were domesticated next, and bitter and poisonous chemicals were bred out of them by picking the crops that were better in quality. In China, villagers were raising millet, short grain, and long grain rice 8 to 9,000 years ago. About the same time, people in Mexico domesticated squash, chilies, avocados, common beans, and millet. 5,000 years ago, millet was soon replaced by corn due to corn having a larger yield. In South America, people domesticated lima beans, potatoes, yuca, sweet potato, and tapioca. The South Americans proved to be excellent at management of their crops. They also practiced terrace farming, as you can see in the picture. In Papua New Guinea, they found banana, sugarcane, and several other tuber and bean crops. In China, people shifted from subsisting using the nearby Yangtze River and dining off fish, tubers, and nuts to growing rice almost exclusively, and then forming complex societies to support their monoculture. Now, the Columbian Exchange. It began after Christopher Columbus revealed the Americas to Europe in 1492. It dramatically changed agriculture everywhere. The Columbian Exchange is known for the movement of plants, animals, and farming practices between the Americas, Europe, Africa, and Asia, which changed agriculture worldwide. New World crops became staples in the Old World. In the picture, you can see Columbus's discovery of America. Potatoes, which could grow in poor soil and cold environments, became a staple of Ireland. fueling population growth. Similarly, maize and cassava became vital crops in Africa, with maize being cheap, calorie dense, and highly adaptable, and cassava being able to grow in nutrient poor soil and survive drought. The picture depicts a joint cassava and maize farm. Tomatoes were embraced in Spain and Italy, used in Spanish soups. They also have a festival to celebrate in Spain called La Tomatina, where they throw tomatoes at each other, and in Italy, they became central to Italian pasta and pizza. Chili peppers, introduced to Asia, added spice to Indian curries and Korean kimchi. These crops enriched diets and became deeply embedded in regional food cultures. Old World, Asian, African, and European crops such as wheat, sugarcane, and coffee were introduced to the Americas, where they found fertile soil and ideal growing conditions. Sugarcane plantations became a large business in the Caribbean and was supplemented with millions of African slaves. Coffee, also from Africa, was brought to Brazil, and to this day, Brazil is the world's largest coffee producer. Crops like cacao and vanilla, native to the Americas, became favorites of European elites. Farmers all around the world also shared knowledge on how to cultivate the new plants in different soils and climates. Chocolate made from cacao, a South American crop, became a favorite of European elites and now is a favorite of children worldwide. Vanilla, another South American crop, became essential in desserts and perfumes. In general, it was the foundation for the interconnected systems of agriculture we rely on to feed ourselves today. The picture is a summary of the agricultural transfers that took place in the Columbian Exchange. Now let's go towards more of the modern age, when farming went from a process wholly dominated by human and animal muscle to the beginnings of a mechanized system. In the 19th century, there was a large labor base, and so farmers took advantage of this along with draft animals to manage reasonable areas of land. Early innovations were four-field crop rotations invented by the Dutch but popularized by Charles Townshend. Jethro Tull's seed drill also helped mechanize seeding at the right depth and spacing. John Deere also invented the steel plow, depicted in the picture, and it was stronger and more efficient than cast iron, making it easier to till sticky prairie soils. Also in Europe, traditional common lands, lands that were unowned, were fenced in and used for agriculture. Mechanized threshers, like the one depicted in the picture, were used to separate chaff from wheat without the use of labor. A major turning point also occurred when tractors began to replace draft animals in the early 20th century, with the first tractor being constructed in 1901. Synthetic fertilizers such as nitrogen fertilizers were able to be mass produced when Fritz Haber discovered how to make ammonia from air under high pressure and temperatures. This led to him winning the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 1918. Then, in 1931, Karl Bosch was able to bring this process to the industrial scale. Then came the Green Revolution. In the 1960s, there was a lot of uncertainty if the world would be able to support the rapidly growing population, especially in poorer countries, with the limited supply of agriculture. Due to widespread adoption of the Green Revolution, large scale famines and social and economic upheavals were averted. This was also mainly due to the development of high yielding varieties of cereals, in particular wheat and rice. It was developed by the International Wheat and Maize Improvement Center, International Rice and Research Institute, and the efforts of Norman Borlaug, an American geneticist who is credited with saving over a billion lives worldwide. The rice and wheat was genetically modified to be shorter, so to reduce the ratio between waste mass like the leaves, stem, and chaff and the nutritious matter. That also helped make it more positively responsive to the fertilizer application. They could also be made to mature faster with more yield and planted anytime instead of fixed seasons. In example, 2 seasons of rice could be grown where there was only 1 season of rice. They were also given genes that helped with insect and disease resistance and adaptability in different kinds of soils. The gradual replacement of traditional varieties of wheat and rice by improved ones led to the worldwide production of rice doubling from 1966 to 1990. Similarly, Asian wheat production had a six-fold increase from 1966 to 1995. Also, during this time period, food security improved as a result from the daily calorie supply in relation to requirement improving from 81 to 120% in Indonesia, from 86 to 110% in China, from 82 to 99% in the Philippines, and from 89 to 94% in India. As there is also less food insecurity, the price of food also dropped. The diffusion of high yield crops also led to a growth in income from the rural landless workers, because plants now required more effort to be high in yield. The future of agriculture is now smart farming, an advanced approach to farming which integrates modern technologies like the Internet of Things into farms to optimize production. Some technologies used today are unmanned aerial vehicles equipped with multispectral, hyperspectral, and thermal cameras. UAVs are used in remote sensing, crop monitoring, and precision spraying of fertilizer. They help the farmers to assess crop health, detect pest infestations, and manage water and fertilizer use. Unmanned ground vehicles. They are ground based robotic systems which automate planting, weeding, and harvesting. They are used for pruning and selective spraying in vineyards. These robots reduce soil compaction, energy use, and the need for heavy machinery. Wireless sensor networks. There are low powered sensors deployed across fields to monitor environmental parameters like soil moisture, temperature, and humidity. The data collected supports precision irrigation and fertilization, reducing waste while ensuring optimal resource use. Machine learning and image processing. Machine learning algorithms look for patterns in the crops, and through that, they can facilitate disease detection, weed classification, and yield prediction. Image processing enhances the images taken by the UAVs and the UGAs. Europe is already utilizing new innovations in smart farming such as Vine Robot. It is a robotic system for vineyards which measures and takes care of grape health, yield prediction, and water management. Flourish. It is a robotic system of both combined UGAs and UAVs that manages fields of sugar, beet, and sunflower. UAVs provide aerial analysis of the field, and the UGAs are used for spraying fertilizer and weeding based on that data. Pantheon. It uses SCADA, supervisory control and data acquisition, to sense water levels in the soil and trigger irrigation or shut the water supply off depending on the water levels. It can calculate temperature and account for irrigating at different temperatures. It also uses UAVs and UGVs to monitor individual plants and automate irrigation. It is used in the growing of hazelnut orchards. The goal of smart farming is sustainability for the environment while reducing waste and costs. It prevents overconsumption of farming resources, targeting plants on a more individual basis, and using automated systems to solve their issues. Currently, it is cost laden and technologically limited, but it has a lot of potential to transform farming practices in the future.